Hello, everyone. My name is Francis, and I'm the sustainability coordinator at Sustainable Capacity Solutions. And I'm here to do a presentation about ourselves and our greater network. So, Sustainable Capacity Solutions is a collective of 5 program/social enterprises committed to addressing the unique capacity building needs of the nonprofit and charitable sector. So, our shared goal is to empower the Canadian environmental non-governmental organization sector to help them fulfill their missions and realize their full potential by offering them the necessary support. Yeah, so you've got these people who are, they're starting organizations, they really want to make a difference in the world. But unfortunately in Canada, there isn't a lot of information out there for people who are starting non-governmental or nonprofit or charitable organizations. And so sort of the purpose of SCS is to sort of provide that education and support for people who are starting or maybe are further into their nonprofit but still need support. So we help with a number of things. So this includes like professional development, financial management, like bookkeeping and fundraising, staffing needs, including like, navigating wage subsidies, and then also internal administration, like helping with creating strat plans. Currently, we are actively supporting over 150 organizations across Canada. So I'm going to get into the problem a little bit more. So a 2022 survey by the Ontario Nonprofit Network found that 83% of organizations are experiencing an increase in costs, while 74% are experiencing an increase in demand for their services. A big part of this due to the pandemic, but we've seen that a lot of this, anecdotally has sort of continued. And then we've also seen that 85% of the organizations surveyed are experiencing problems with recruitment and retention. So this doesn't mean that there's not the talent out there. There's a lot of very educated, talented people who could very well fill these roles. But potentially, due to costs increase, maybe they can't afford to pay competitive wage. Maybe they can't afford to have staff other than contract or part-time staff for a period of time, meaning that they can't necessarily properly execute their programs. Or it could just mean that, they just don't have the capacity to even consider going through the process of, receiving tons of applicants and hiring and, all of that stuff takes a lot of capacity. And so as a result of these three things, so the increase in costs, increased demand for services, and decrease in recruitment, 86% of organizations have been scaling back their programs and services due to limited capacity. No, this is really unfortunate. And as you can see, there's a few other statistics below that are pulled from the same survey that you can sort of look at. But the bottom one I'm going to highlight, which is that 63% of nonprofits know of similar organizations who are closing down or ceasing operations. Now, this is a big problem because, as we said before, the reason the nonprofit and charitable sector exists is to really help to solve these problems in society that aren't necessarily being addressed, that are really important to solve or at least be putting resources toward. And so what this means is that, we're not only seeing that the problems that these nonprofits are tackling are increasing, but we're also seeing sort of that there isn't as much of those people working on those solutions able to kind of execute, like grow with the problem, if that makes sense. And not even to mention the fact that the problem isn't reducing currently. But we need these organizations to be doing the work they're doing. A lot of them are doing vital programming. It's really unfortunate to see them having to limit their capacity. And so our solution at SCS is that we perform specialized capacity checkups to help organizations understand themselves in terms of where their capacity is at, and then also provide them with education and resources necessary to increase their capacity. We provide tailored action plans and like specifically guided services that target the specific needs of your organization. And we sort of have capacity built down into 6 key areas. So this includes leadership and organizational culture, risk management and legal issues, financial management and fund development, governance and board development, communications and outreach, and then volunteer engagement and human resources. And so our intake process is that, first of all, an organization would meet with SES to do a capacity checkup to determine their strengths, weaknesses, and needs. And then after that, we would direct the ENGO to the program that most aligns with the needs that they need fulfilled. So for training, coaching, and mentorship, we have the Capacity Building Institute. For human resources and youth support, we have Eco-Internships. For fund development and fundraising, we have sustainable philanthropy. For financial literacy and bookkeeping, we have Green Books, and then administration and management, we have Eco-Executive Director. I would encourage you to reflect on these capacity questions. You could do this as in like, for your own organization, or maybe if you're somebody who's thinking about going into the nonprofit sector, what sort of skills you feel like you maybe are good at or lacking in. And so the first question is, do you feel that your organization is struggling with capacity? What kinds of capacity issues is your organization facing? A lot of, there's going to be a number of different capacity issues, but we find that a lot of the organizations that we deal with struggle a lot with things like fundraising. And then what successes is your organization having in terms of capacity and programming? And this can be very easily glossed over because, sometimes we're so busy thinking about all the things that are going wrong, but there's actually a lot of things that are going right. And so this could be a number of things, like maybe you executed this amazing program and you planted 500 trees more than last year, or you just planted 500 trees, which is still great. Or maybe you have a very stable and reliant volunteer network that you can always rely on. These are wins, and yeah, I would encourage you to take a moment and think about this. So next I'm going to get into the programming for each specific organization. So the Capacity Building Institute, also known as CBI, was created to provide equal opportunity and access to capacity building training for charitable and nonprofit organizations alongside just generally environmental leaders across Canada. So we have a number of programs under this. So first of all, we have the Capacity Building Certificate Program, also known as the CBCP. And the CBCP is really meant for people who are interested in taking that higher level leadership role. So this is perfect for people who are board members. This could be like new board members, older board members, people who are board chairs. This could also be for executive directors. You could maybe be like a newer executive director, somebody who's been at their position for a while, or even somebody who's, maybe in that like a management role and you're looking at becoming an executive director. This would be a great training for you to take. And essentially it just sort of goes into all of the higher level things necessary to sort of run your organization. Like some examples include how to write a high level budget that makes sense, how to write a case for support, how to sort of navigate legal challenges, like how to decide whether or not you should incorporate your nonprofit, how to decide if you're a nonprofit, if you want to become a charitable organization, like all those kinds of questions. Other ones including like, EDI in the workplace, things like that. Those are the kinds of things that you learn in the CBCP. We do have a lot more information available upon request. So if you're at all interested, feel free to reach out. And we have the internship training program, also known as the ITP, which is sort of like a version of the CBCP, but it's tailored for people who are first starting out in the environmental sector. If you're a youth who's under 30 and whether maybe you're hired through a wage subsidy or you have somebody at your organization that's under 30 and it's sort of like their sort of first or second job in the environmental sector, this would be a really great training program for them to take. And essentially it goes into all of the basics of a nonprofit. So I've personally taken the program. I'm also taking the CBCP right now, and it's very great. But the ITP specifically, it goes into like a number of topics. So as I said before, a lot of the people who take this program, they're people who are fresh out of, maybe they're fresh out of their undergrad, maybe they're fresh out of their master's, or maybe they're sort of taking an internship somewhere within there. And so usually it just teaches you like everything you need to know if you're first joining the nonprofit sector. So this is like, how does the nonprofit sector / charitable sector work? What is a board? What types of boards exist? How do you write an effective email to your colleague? How to write a land acknowledgement, the importance of EDI, and then you also learn a little bit about fundraising as well in terms of like how do you write an LOI, and so sort of like all of these skills where it's like these are things that you don't necessarily learn in your degree but are really vital to having a strong foundation in the charitable sector. And so that's sort of the purpose of it. It's really great. Then we also do fundraising intensive workshops. We also do capacity building webinar series, and so those are free webinars to do related to a capacity building topic. And we have usually like 12 per year, and they're totally free. They're really helpful. We've had a variety of topics, including like leadership transition, how to onboard your board, compassion fatigue, like a number of different things that are really related to the environmental nonprofit sector. And once again, those are totally free, no need to pay. You can just sign up. I will say registration is limited, and sometimes we do like it can be quite competitive depending on the topic. So like if you see it and you're umming and ahhing about signing up, it's better to sign up sooner rather than later because we do have a limited number of spots for those. And then we also have mentorship training. So for the CBCP and the ITP, anybody who's enrolled in both those programs will get a mentor. The mentorship training program is essentially just for these mentors to get that training that they need in order to be a mentor. I personally took the one for the ITP mentor training, and it was incredibly helpful. You sort of go through different scenarios, and so it's just so that way, like, if you're getting a mentor, you know that they've actually been trained and they sort of know what they're talking about and what they're going to say to you. And also as a mentor, it's nice because, you know that you're going to be giving information that's actually helpful for people. All of our programming sort of aligns within these 6 core modules, and especially CBI is very focused on these. So if you sign up for any of our trainings, all of it is sort of funneled into these 6 core themes. If your organization has really high capacity, all of these are going to be working really well in unison and essentially in harmony. But that often doesn't happen. Not every single organization is going to be amazing at all of these, and that's totally okay. And that's actually very normal. You could be in a situation where maybe you have really fantastic leadership and organizational culture, you have really great volunteers, but you're just really struggling to get those grants written or those grants submitted, or even just getting like acceptances. And so yeah, that's just like an example. There's many different examples that could exist within these 6. So next I'm going to talk a bit about eco-internships. I think this is sort of ones that a lot of people are interested in. So eco-internships exist to support environmental organizations across Canada by connecting nonprofits to funding opportunities to hire interns through wage subsidies, grants, and other funding. So something to note is that this year we will have 2 different streams, which we will have the paid internship version, and then we will also have the condensed volunteer or part-time version. At Eco-Internships, we help you navigate and apply for wage subsidies. So wage subsidies can be very difficult and very tedious. And, often when you're applying, you need to apply to multiple different people who are offering wage subsidies. There can be different application requirements. There's different dates. It can just be very confusing. Like if you're either somebody who's either you're on the intern side or you're on the employer side, it can be confusing. And so Eco-Internships essentially will just help you with that whole process, like helping you know when the dates are to apply, how to sort of apply, what kinds of information you need, things like that. And then also deciding like which wage subsidy works best for your organization. And then we also help with the hiring and onboarding process. So what this means is if you're an organization, maybe you put out a job posting, you could get hundreds of applicants for that job. And if you have a really small capacity, like maybe you only have a volunteer board and then a part-time ED, that could be a lot of work to go through all 500 of those applications. And so at Eco-Internships, we essentially help with that, where we'll go through all of the candidates. So people apply to Eco-Internships directly. We pre-screen all those candidates. And then instead of you having to go through that many applicants, instead we'll give you maybe like anywhere from 5 to 10. And so that just makes the process easier, where you can trust that those people are going to be things that you've expressed that you want in an intern or a staff member. It could also be there's a lot of like overlapping interest. And then that way you can go directly to the interview phase if you decide to go with one of the pre-selected candidates. And then similarly for the interns, if you apply for a program, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get a placement. However, if you do get a callback, you can get guaranteed that you very likely will get an interview and that you're going to have a really quick turnaround time. And we also help with the onboarding process too. So what that means is that, there's a lot of onboarding that goes into obviously hiring anybody at your organization. And so we sort of help with that. We also help with monitoring reporting processes. So for a lot of wage subsidies, you'll have to do a beginning, well, depending on them, but usually there's like a beginning, middle, and end report. You also might have to submit pay stubs and things like that. And so we essentially just sort of help you with that, because if you, let's just say, I don't know, something happens and you forget a deadline, you can lose your funding. And that would be really horrible for both the intern and for the organization. And so we just sort of help to make sure that, you're on track, you're submitting things on time, the intern knows what's happening, you know what's happening, things like that. As I said before, we also provide a lot of mentorship, obviously work experience through the interns getting a placement, and your organization can also really benefit from having an intern. So we're sort of going to have 2 main versions of the ITP, as I said before. So we have the option 1, which is the full version, which is for youth committed to working at an organization long term. So this could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months. We've also had interns a little bit less than this who do like, maybe 4 months. But the idea is that like you need to be sort of committed to this. The total time for the full version is 60 hours. Now I know that this seems like a lot, but if you're hiring an intern at an organization that's not really a lot. That's like an hour or 2 a week. In terms of just put like back into their training. And we have a 1-week intensive boot camp that we're going to be running in January. And we also have our typical summer one that we're going to be running in August. And then we're also going to have 2 hours worth of monthly networking sessions. And these are actually already running now, but we'll also have more dates coming in the summer and fall. And basically it's just an opportunity for the interns to get to talk to other interns, expand their network, maybe collaborate on some things that can be really helpful. And then we also have the monthly mentor meetings, as I mentioned before. So typically it is once a month, including, they can also message each other outside of that if they'd like to. And then this 60 hours also gives time to go through all the online readings, tutorials, and assignments. So interns within the stream will have some assignments to do and a lot of times they're really relevant to like things that you'd want your intern to learn about. So I know like when I was during the ITP, one of my assignments was to write a land acknowledgement for myself and my organization. And obviously that's going to be helpful because if I'm doing any kind of presentation or anything like that, that's the kind of thing that I'd want to include. And then for the second option, which is the condensed version, that's pretty great for people who are part-time employees. So this could be working less than 20 hours a week, or for volunteers with limited time. The total time for that one is 20 hours. It's 2 to 3 hours worth of orientation, which is just sort of, getting started with everything, meeting the other people in the cohort, things like that. And then there's a minimum of 3 hours worth of mentorship meetings. So once again, the people in the stream will be assigned a mentor. And then there's also 12 hours allotted to going through all the online course materials. So this is sort of similar to the ITP, but it's a condensed version. So it's the things that you absolutely need to know to work in the nonprofit sector or to be like a volunteer. And then there's also monthly meetings as well, and those sort of run, I guess, just throughout the year. And just something to note is that both of these programs are available for youth under 30. This could be a youth that's already at your organization. So maybe you hired someone, or maybe you typically hire people in the summer or to do a specific round of field work, and maybe you're like, ooh, I really want them to learn a little bit more about like how the nonprofit sector works, or how a board works, or how to do, just some basic things. This could be a really great option. Or Eco-Internships can help you find youth and hire them through both wage subsidies, or just generally, even with volunteering, we can also help hire volunteers. You can either have a youth already that you want to put through the program, or we can help you with the whole process of hiring a youth and then training them as well. So this is the 2025 hiring timeline. So the application portals are open. Currently, we have the employer and then the youth application portals open, and we have the youth for the employment opportunities and youth for the volunteering as well. And from now until January, we're going to be doing a number of information sessions, including this one, which is recorded, so you can watch it whenever. We sort of split up our training into two sort of sections this year, where we're going to have sort of the winter one, where the boot camp is going to be January 27th to 31st. And then we're going to have the summer one, which it includes both. So not just the condensed summer training, but also the normal training as well. So for both of these, you could do either, and we'll have a training available. And then something to note, which is really important for wage subsidies. So wage subsidies typically open between February and May. And if you are an intern or you're an employer interested in getting a wage subsidy, the deadline to apply is February 28th. The reason for this is because the sooner you can get your wage subsidy application put in, the more likely it is that you're going to get hired. And as many people may have seen, wage subsidies have become very competitive over the past few years. And so obviously the sooner that you can get matched and apply, the more likely it is that you'll get your wage subsidy. With that said, we cannot guarantee that every single person is going to get a wage subsidy, or that every single organization is going to get a wage subsidy, but we will try our hardest to make sure that everything goes swimmingly. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about Greenbooks. So Greenbooks is a social enterprise that was founded to help Canadian environmental organizations with their bookkeeping and financial literacy needs. Specifically under Greenbooks, currently, we are only offering resources and templates on financial literacy and education. With that said, many people probably remember Greenbooks doing a lot of bookkeeping for smaller NGOs. We're having a little bit of a reconstruction right now. It's not going away, but we will be offering more in the future in terms of not just that, but maybe some hands-on workshops. If you're interested in Greenbooks or you want more information, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll have the contact information at the end. In the nonprofit sector, financial stability is obviously fundamental to fulfilling your mission and having a long-lasting impact. And so sustainable philanthropy essentially works with nonprofits and charities to help them build their financial stability. So we have a number of different offerings under this, including the shared fundraising Google Calendar, and this includes key deadlines of relevant grants. So if you sign up for this, you'll basically have it so in your calendar, you'll have a bunch of grant deadlines, and it sort of like takes the hassle out of, having to do that yourself. And also it kind of helps you keep on track with more grants. And then we also have access to a fundraising portal that's just filled with resources like how to write a strong LOI and how to write budgets that make sense and are, ideal for the grant you're applying to. We also help with fund development plans. We also offer that peer coaching support. We also host the intern fundraising meetings. If you've hired an intern and you're putting them through the ITP or you hire them through Eco-Internships in general, they will have access to the intern fundraising meetings. And essentially, depending on the size of the cohort, these are weekly to bi-weekly meetings where the interns will meet and they'll just learn all about fundraising. This includes, how to find a grant that works for your organization based on your mission, how to write an LOI, how to write a longer form application, how to begin creating a budget. And so these are just the kind of things where even if within your intern's deliverables, you're not interested in them doing fundraising, they'll still learn how to do it. And as many of us know in the charitable sector, this is a foundational skill. And so it's really awesome because, these interns, they're learning about everything to do with the environmental sector, but specifically learn about fundraising. And so this is the kind of things that really helps people continue and find jobs in the future too. And also as an organization, you can trust that your intern is going to understand and apply for grants that, make sense and hopefully get some accepted. I mean, we can't guarantee, but hopefully. And then I'm going to get into the next one, which is Eco-Executive Director. So at Eco-Executive Director, we specialize in systemizing executive director functions and administrative tasks to take the struggle out of managing your ENGO. So we provide training, peer support, and job stability. So there are sort of two parts to Eco-Executive Director. The first is that there's a lot of resources. Once again, another sort of there's like online resources, information, things like that to do with anything related to executive director functions. So this includes creating a strat plan, understanding how to better communicate and support your board. And then also things like risk management and legal issues. Obviously, we're not lawyers, but we can help with things like insurance coverage selection. And that's an incredibly important thing for your organization to ensure the peace of mind of your staff and your board. And the other part of Eco-Executive Director is that we also offer hiring executive directors to work at organizations. So maybe your organization, maybe you're quite small, and you're like, okay, you have your board and you're hiring your intern, but it's getting quite difficult because your board is volunteer. There's not necessarily enough time to sort of support the intern. In which case, you might say, okay, we want to hire an executive director for like 10 hours a week or 15 hours a week. In which case, the way the Eco-Executive Director works is that we'll get somebody who's, qualified or a previous ED. They'll come to us and they'll be like, okay, I sort of am ready to work. And so what we'll do is that they'll essentially share their time between two organizations. And so what that means is that, they'll spend maybe like a certain amount of hours at organization A and a certain amount of time at organization B. Also, like, organization A takes a certain amount of their wage and certain B takes another certain amount of their wage depending on how many hours they're working. And so this can be really helpful because, if you're an organization and you don't necessarily have the capacity or you feel like you don't need an ED full time, this can just kind of give you that higher level management support that you really need. This can also help with all the things in this list before. Once again, having an ED obviously helps with strat planning, helps with board support, can really help with organization and program development, professional leadership and management. All these things are really supported by having executive director. And it's also good for the ED because they can trust that they're going to be paid a fair wage and that they're going to be, have that employment as well. Yeah, if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We're totally happy to answer any questions. If you're interested in sustainable capacity solutions, sustainable philanthropy, or Eco-Executive Director, you can just reach out to SCS directly. So we have our website here. You're also welcome to take a screenshot of this, but sustainablecapacity.ca. You can email our Executive Director, Chantel, whose email is info@sustainablecapacity.ca. We also have our phone number. We are located in Ottawa, in Ontario, but we do work nationwide. So if you're a Canadian nonprofit, doesn't matter where you are, we can help you. Eco-Internships, Capacity Building Institute, and Green Books have their own websites and emails. So for Eco-Internships, you can go to ecointernships.ca and you can email Hannah at info@ecointernships.ca. We also have Capacity Building Institute, which Hannah also monitors the email for. Then for Green Books, which is usually managed by our bookkeeper, Nancy, or Chantel, it's going to be greenbookscanada.ca, and then the email is info@greenbookscanada.ca. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that was helpful. We hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.